All right, so prior to travel, you actually need to submit a request in Concur, and the department recommends that you submit this 30 days in advance, especially if you are trying to get funding from the department. So I'm on the Concur website here, and I will go to Requests. From here, I'm going to click on New Request. Any of the boxes that have red on the sides mean that this box is required in order to go to the next section. So under Request and Trip Name, I'm going to make up a name. Under How will you be booking your travel? So for this, you will primarily be choosing either option 1 or option 2. In option 1, you are going to book either your air, hotel, or car through Concur, or all of them in Concur. With option number 2, you're going to be booking outside of Concur, meaning you're going to be using a website like Google Flights or Priceline or Southwest, any of those. And it's important to note that if you are booking in Concur and you choose option number 1, you want to first submit this request and make sure it is approved, and then you're going to be booking, rather than booking first and then submitting a request. If you book first and then submit a request, it generates 2 different requests for both of these, and these can't be merged later on. So it's really important to first submit the request and get it approved, and then you can book within Concur. So for this, I will be choosing option number 1. Under Destination City, you'll put the city that you're traveling to. Under Dates, you'll include the dates of your travel. Under Trip Purpose, you'll click on whichever option applies. Event name is the name of the conference. Trip type, you'll choose an option. Under Traveler type, typically it will be either grant, OU employee, or non-grant OU employee. You'll want to choose an option for is car government owned. The official address is already in here. Under department, you will click on our department. You can search for that. I've completed a request in here, so it's already there. Does this trip contain personal travel? For me, it does not. However, if you are taking personal travel, you'll want to note that here. The comment box here is for leaving any comments related to this request. So for example, if you are requesting funding from Graduate Student Senate or other sources, you will want to include that here. Next, you will go to the Segments tab. And I like to save each page. From here, we have options for flight, car rental, or hotel reservation, and this button specifically applies to hotels, not anything like Airbnb. So I'm going to be adding a flight here. And at this point in the request, you are basically estimating any costs that you estimate you will have related to your trip. So I'm going to act as if I'm flying. And it already has the dates in here because I provided that earlier. Now here it has an amount. There are 2 ways that you can get the pricing for this. You can either use Concur. When you first go to the Concur's website, it has a little trip search here, and you can type in the information. From here, it will have the itinerary here, and then it will show different options for flights. And so here it has shop by schedule or shop by fares. And you can sort this by different options. And so I can see that an estimated price would be $268.40. The other option is to use something like Google Flights if you know you're going to be booking outside of Concur or other websites to provide a price quote. And you'll want to take a screenshot of anywhere that you pull a price quote from. So for example, I would pull a price quote from here, or from here I would take a screenshot. And you won't include that in this request section, but you will need that for the expenses. So always good to take screenshots when possible. And from here, I now have an itinerary created with my ticket. I do want to note that if you are booking outside Concur, you need to provide a airfare comparison. And so the screenshots that I was talking about, you'll want to provide one from the place that you're booking from, and then also one from Concur. And you'll include those in the expense. Not this part, but I just want to mention that in this section. So I would just take a screenshot of both and attach that when I go to upload my expenses in my expense request. At this point, if you're going to rent a car or rent a hotel, you'll want to include that here. And as I mentioned, this button is specifically for hotel reservations. So if you're using something like Airbnb, you won't include that here. And so I'm going to add in a hotel reservation. And if you choose to stay at a different hotel that is not the conference hotel, you need to provide a justification in the comments for why. So here's another scenario where you would want to take a screenshot of both. So I would take a screenshot of this showing the price that the hotel for the conference is $234. And then here I have another airport that I found that is $211. And in my expense report, I would provide both of those. But for this, I'm going to put $211. And I do realize that these hotels are in Chicago, not Texas. I just wanted to use those because there were varying prices. All right, and it's saying here that any rate greater than the approved rate will require evidence. So again, just providing those screenshots showing the rates. All right, under expenses, so if you were going to include anything like Airbnb, that would go under this hotel/lodging. Other things that you can add ahead of time include printing. So for example, if you're going to print a poster, you can include that in here. And you'll want to add under your comments what you're doing. I also want to note on here that they do have car mileage as well as fuel. If you are driving, you can only claim up to the maximum airfare amount. So for example, if it costs you $250 to fly, but it would cost you $300 to drive, you would only get $250 back. And as a side note, if you are claiming mileage, you cannot charge fuel on your travel card. You can either claim mileage or you can claim fuel, but you can't claim both. And again, you could add anything else in here that you would want. So I've added everything I can think of currently on here. Under approval flow, it just shows that Dr. Day will be the one approving this request. And under audit trail, it will show more information once I submit this request. And you can attach any documents. So for example, if you take those screenshots, you can attach that here, or you can attach it in the expense. You'll just want to keep those and you will submit the request. All right, so now here under requests, I have an active request and it shows that I've submitted it. Once this is approved, right here where it says total, it will actually change to book. This will change to a book link only if you chose option number 1, booking inside Concur. Otherwise, once you've booked in here, or if you chose option number 2, it will change to an expense link. And at this point, you can start building your expense report. Any expenses that are put on your travel card will already be generated in the system. Or you can wait until you get back from your trip and then start building the expense report. There are a few things that are important to note about expenses and creating your expense report. If you are trying to get a car rental, it's difficult to justify unless the taxis or shuttles are more money. It's really important that when you go to submit an expense report, you have an itinerary for your conference. So for example, there's a PDF version of this. You'll want to attach that to your expense report. It lists things like your hotel cost and the food that is provided. And this is especially important if you plan on staying outside the hotel conference. And it's important to note that the hotel that you stay at cannot be more expensive than the conference hotel. Additionally, if you are driving out of state, you will need to provide a flight comparison showing that it is less expensive to drive than to fly. If your flight is more expensive or your lodging is more expensive than the system's allowable amount, then you need to provide a justification for why. So for example, if you have to choose a more expensive flight because you have class during the times listed, you'll need to provide screenshots showing the prices and in the comments section list why and provide documentation showing your class schedule. Additionally, tips cannot exceed 15%. And last, this is really important, when you go to submit an expense report, your total expenses cannot exceed the amount that you're approved for funding. If you go over the amount that you were approved for, then this extra will be taken out of your paycheck. All right, so that is how you book a request in Concur.